With more than 6,000 small and microcap companies listed, if you're looking for the next apple at the earliest stage, then channelchek truly is the orchard. The listed companies support channelchek, so it's free for you, the potential investor, to gain access to institutional quality research from FINRA licensed analysts, advanced market data, industry reports, news, and a growing catalog of videos and webcasts. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and register for channelchek so you're always up to date on what's going on at the small and microcap data place. Welcome to this special edition of the C-Suite series presented by channelchek and Noble Capital Markets. Noble is an SEC-registered, FINRA-licensed broker-dealer and the source of the equity research available on channelchek. This Uranium Power Players Investor Forum presentation features enCore Energy, OTCQX ticker symbol ENCUF, TSXV ticker symbol EU. Following a brief overview presentation from Executive Chairman William Sheriff and CEO and Director Paul Goranson, Noble Senior Research Analyst Michael Heim will moderate a Q&A session. With that, I am pleased to present William and Paul.
Hello, I'm William Sheriff, Executive Chairman of enCore Energy. I'm joined today with Paul Goranson, our CEO. I'll give you the first overview of the company, and Paul will come in with the details to round out the presentation. Be glad to take any of your questions afterwards. Usual disclaimer, and then I'll just jump right in. Our objective and mandate is to become one of the dominant ISR producers of uranium in the U.S. We're entirely focused on ISR in the U.S., the world's largest consumer of nuclear power. We've got an incredible pedigree on the team that's joined together here for enCore. The company's been around for about 11 years now, having formed shortly before Fukushima. But it basically joins together two teams, the Energy Metals team, of which I was chairman and co-founder, that eventually was sold to Uranium One back during the last boom cycle of 05 to 08. And many of the people have come with us through that journey, having worked with Uranium One for a while, and then coming on to enCore following that. We also are joined and really accentuate the team this time around by Paul Goranson, having joined us as CEO. Brings a wealth of experience in ISR, having been involved with virtually every ISR, or certainly seen or familiar with every ISR project in the U.S., as well as a great number of those worldwide. So together, I would put our ISR expertise and team up against just about anyone's. You can tell from the chart on the right that our share ownership is broadly based. I've got about 10% insiders holding, and then the rest is split equally between institutions as well as retail. And the retail is further split, with about 2/3 of that being high net worth individuals. I have a lot of concentrated shareholdings within these blocks, and the market's really changed a lot since the last time around. We have the influence of the ETF and the social media that were not present last time, and that really takes a big chunk of the ownership that was not present last time around and was dominated strictly by the hedge funds and institutions. So a much broader base than normal. So we consider our people our strongest asset at enCore. Paul Goranson, which I mentioned previously, is our CEO and leader of the group. Been deeply involved with ISR for over 30 years, and including notable engagements as president of Cameco Resources and with Energy Fuels prior to joining us. A number of the group comes from the Energy Metals group, including Dr. Stover, who is our former CEO, now our Chief Technical Officer, one of the co-inventors of the ISR process. Richard Cherry, formerly running General Atomics for the Blue Brothers. Mark Paliza, 40 years, most of it with Uranium Resources. Here again, deeply involved with permitting, as well as operations in ISR. And Bill Harris, the last one I'll mention on this page by name. He joined us at Energy Metals when we went to the New York Stock Exchange for Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, formerly a C-level executive, and brings a wealth of audit experience to the company. A few of the folks on the ground that I might mention in terms of our technical staff: John Seeley, our principal geologist in Texas, years and years of experience. Joe Harrington, many years of reclamation, which of course is part of the whole fuel cycle, and a strong supporting cast, as you can see. Here again, just about ready to turn it over to Paul for the details, but our asset summary at this point: short term, Texas. We've got a number of projects there, a number of which we'll be working on to confirm historic resources in the coming year, but centered on the key asset of the two fully licensed uranium production plants at Kingsville and Rosita, with work underway at Rosita currently. Obviously, our dominant long-term position in New Mexico, where we control roughly 50% of the district, over 460 square miles of resources of mineral rights that cost us nothing to hold. And this is certainly a really key strength for us going forward. As I also mentioned, we're looking to fill in that sort of intermediate time frame of production, and there's we hope to do that through some of the consolidation that we see coming in the industry. But with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, and he can walk you through a bit more of the details. Paul?
Thanks, Bill. Well, I'll just kick it off by talking about our Texas assets. As Bill mentioned, with the Westwater transaction, we acquired two licensed facilities. Those are Kingsville Dome and Rosita. These are, I'll get into more detail about them, but they're production facilities that are fully licensed and fully permitted. We also acquired an exploration project called Butler Ranch, and then as well as we've got a group of properties we're developing right now that we call the Upper Spring Creek Development Project, that will be ultimately feeding our Rosita to start with, as we begin to look at a pipeline of projects in South Texas. Texas has got a long history of uranium production. And most of that production is using ISR, in-situ recovery. And because of that history, it's got a well-experienced and well-established regulatory environment that gives us the confidence that we can get our facilities, these new projects, new pipeline projects, fully licensed and permitted to feed our existing capacity. There's a lot of growth upside here, because as we're leveraging our current data that we've acquired over a period of time to look at new, actually known deposits that have never been exploited, that we can bring into production in the near term. As you can see on the slide, that even the USGS shows that there's a significant amount of potential resources that are of reasonable cost, recovery cost, that can be brought into production at some point in the future. A little more detail on our facilities. If you look on the slide here, the top right is our Kingsville Dome facility. It's a facility that was built back in 1987. It was operated successfully all the way through 2008 or 2009. And then Rosita, towards the bottom, was started up in 1991 and operated off and on until 2008. Both these plants have a combined capacity right now of about 1.6 million pounds production per year. That's as uranium. However, because the nature of their equipment and size, they have the ability to scale up to effectively double capacity, if not more, at a reasonable cost and with minimal licensing or authorization necessary. One of the reasons why we're focusing on Rosita is because, first of all, it's located close to where a lot of these pipeline projects I mentioned earlier. But also it's received a recent upgrade back in 2008 that was never quite completed. So we're doing a limited campaign, capital campaign, that should take us about 9 months and just under $1 million to be able to bring this back to full production capability, even with upgrades to technology to meet current best practices. Kingsville Dome we're maintaining as a site, as a main location for administration support, and but also it requires a little bit more work, but we're using that as a capacity option. So when we see our production increase to a point where we believe it's time to bring on Kingsville, we'll be doing that. And all of our production plans are coupled around the market. And so we're going to be relying on market signals to be able to make the determination when we're going to turn on. But we want to be prepared because in the past, as we've seen, the first movers are the ones who are rewarded the most. Both these plants are designed are constructed right now as central processing plants. So we will be operating remote satellite plants that will be feeding these using resin transfers, basically trucking resin between the mine and back to the central processing plant. A little bit about our future growth. So in the picture, you see a drilling rig out in the brush, which this South Texas is well known for. And in the lower left-hand corner, this is one of our satellite plants that we have constructed. Right now, we have the capacity to be able to put in about 4,000 gallons per minute of ion exchange capacity wherever we need to when we're ready. And that's equipment that came as part of the Westwater transaction. So we're using that to leverage these pipeline properties that we mentioned earlier. The Butler Ranch has significant historic mineral resources, and we expect to commence drilling activities out there in the very near future to begin confirming those resources to meet 43101 standards. In fact, we just received our exploration permit for the Butler Ranch area earlier this week. We're in the process of putting together a project called Upper Spring Creek, which is a coupling of a couple of known uranium deposits that have been previously licensed and permitted that were never operated, that we will be able to put back into, get them relicensed and permitted as amendments to our existing permits at Rosita and Kingsville, and be able to bring those in the near term to feed Rosita as a central processing plant. And we're currently continuing to evaluate more projects to acquire to feed that pipeline, because we intend Texas to be our base, our cash source of cash revenue to support our larger strategy that includes New Mexico and potential mergers and acquisitions. A little bit about our resource overview. We have two projects that have NI 43101 resources. Our Crownpoint Hosta Butte project in New Mexico and our Marquez Juan Tafoya, New Mexico. Both are located in New Mexico. I'll get into the details of those two later. But you can also see we have significant historic resources that need to be brought into NI 43101 compliance, which we anticipate doing over a period of time. We're not actually running with a backlog, but as the time avails, we'll be improving those and upgrading those resource reports. As Bill mentioned, with the closing of the Westwater transaction, we were able to have a dominant position in New Mexico. We have, as you can see from the graphic there, everything that's in green was what enCore had prior to that transaction. Everything that's in all the other colors is what we gained after that transaction. So you can see we've got a pretty broad project portfolio and a lot of upside, because you can see we've got significant properties that are in the checkerboard areas that have known uranium resources. And several of those, a lot of those are ISR amenable. And the reason why we keep bringing up ISR is because it does have a lower capital cost and lower cost of entry to get to production relative to conventional mining. But we do have some conventional properties we have, and we've still are maintaining those in our portfolio as well, because there will be a point where we may look at bringing those into production as well. A little bit about Crownpoint Hosta Butte. This is an ISR project. It's actually partially licensed and permitted in New Mexico. As you can see, we have significant indicated resources and inferred resources. The license is held by Laramide Resources, and we have a good relationship with them. But we see this as probably where we're going to see New Mexico. The first production coming out of New Mexico would be associated with the Crownpoint Hosta Butte project. Since those are so advanced on their permitting and licensing. Marquez, Juan, Tafoya. We just completed and issued a PEA for this project. And I say this project because there used to be two projects that have been held by separate companies since the inception. And we're the first time with enCore, now the first company that's able to combine the two projects and actually create a unified resource for this deposit. And that's important because it was the same deposit that was split simply by a fence line. And it is currently planned out as a conventional mine, underground mine. Nearby was a former mill site that was built back in the 1970s, has been decommissioned, and could be is an ideal site for a new mill that could be used to process this. So everything's going to depend on economics with this. We're also looking at portions of that ore body that's called the Southeast deposit that may be ISR amenable, which could help us advance this property in the portfolio. But also we're looking at alternatives such as heap leaching and other things that were described in the PEA. So this is a good project. It's all on fee land, private fee land and Spanish land grant land. So it's in a good location and has a lot of important things going for it. Nose Rock is a property that has a lot of opportunity with respect to ISR recovery, has significant historic resources. Same with West Largo, which is another property not too far from Crownpoint, Hosta Butte, also another potential ISR facility property. And we got New Mexico Ambrosia Lake, Treeline, that is it could be very likely ISR amenable. This is a part of the district where old stopes leaching was occurring at some of the mines where uranium was recovered similar to an ISR process. So we believe that there's a high chance that significant resources could be available using ISR. And that's kind of the discussion of some of our principal properties, but you also have I like to call our secret sauce. That's our data. And I mentioned to you about these pipeline projects we're developing in Texas, advancing and acquiring. Well, those were all discovered with this database that we have that comes from several different sources. And we've been able to leverage that along with the expertise of our team to be able to identify projects and begin to acquire them and build this production pipeline. We'll be looking at that in other districts to complement what we're looking at with respect to potential mergers and acquisitions. As you can see from, as Bill and I have described, we've got a real clear objective to become the premier uranium producer in the U.S., focusing on ISR. We have significant NI 43-101 compliant resources. We hope to boost that in the near future. We have a strong technical team with a lot of broad-based experience from all the way from exploration, project development, construction, operation, and decommissioning and cleanup. So we got the full cycle of the uranium production cycle, but also we have a strong bench strength on the nuclear fuel cycle itself. That's where our customers come in, and on the uranium marketing side, that allows us what we believe is a unique blend of experience within this group. With our leading position, land position in New Mexico, we have significant, a long-term future in uranium production. We leverage all these pieces with starting at the 2 uranium facilities in South Texas.
Well, Paul, Bill, thank you for the presentations. Very thorough. I prepared a dozen questions and I think you answered about half of them in the presentation. So either you guys are doing a real good job on the presentation or I'm not doing a good enough job preparing tough questions. But I do have a handful left and a couple of confirmations. One, I want to start with the supply contract agreement that you came to. It seems like a terrific way to provide a little optionality. Did I hear you say that you really have full option of whether you provide through production or inventory or go out and buy more uranium on the spot?
That is correct, and I have to compliment our counterparty on that. contract to provide that flexibility. It's not always that these days, it's not something that always shows up in contracts, but it does provide us that optionality. Obviously, we'd rather produce into that contract, but you know, market conditions being what they are, the flexibility this provides us provides us a great, you know, it gives us what I believe is a good basis to justify our decision to go to production when we're ready.
And really, there's not much risk on your side. I mean, I guess the only risk would be if you're spending some of the expenditures to get the plant up and running. And
yep.
Okay.
But those costs are relatively small. It's not like we're doing a major capital campaign. And so I think that the risk of not being prepared to go into production when the time is right is probably greater than the risk of doing this limited work in preparation.
And I think everyone believes eventually uranium prices are going up. So even if you do the expenditures, it's just a matter of maybe having done it earlier than need be.
Yep, as they say, you can't be a miner and not be an optimist.
Yeah. And just to repeat, we're talking roughly about $1 million to get Rosita up to speed, and now under 12 months since we've begun the process.
That's correct. It's probably going to be under that, under $1 million, but about 9 months.
How important was building up an inventory, buying an inventory in terms of working out that supply contract?
Well, it gives us, it provides us a significant amount of risk management. So if things don't, you know, assuming even the price we're assuming the price is going to improve, but if it doesn't improve at levels that would incentivize new production, we could leverage that because we bought when prices were relatively low, leverage that to fill the contract, but also mitigate, you know, provide the ability to get some revenue off of it.
Now, I know you're not trying to be like some of the, you know, the other firms that are both basically having an inventory and playing the difference between their stock price and the inventory. But would you consider increasing your inventory larger than what it is?
I'll let Bill talk about that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you know, here again, our business is to produce uranium, and you know, to be an active participant in the consolidation, you know, which is certainly leading to better efficiencies of production in the U.S. You've got a handful of producers and all carrying a pretty significant G&A, so there's a compelling need for consolidation. We'll leave the speculation on the uranium price largely to others. We agree with their thesis, but we think that our funds are better spent in general towards you know, the realization of the production goal and increasing our assets. Bit of a longer term view. You know, assuming they're right, we'll all benefit. That purchase we had was strictly to you know, ensure the ease of getting into commercial production. Once you start production, you know, it typically takes you, you know, a few months to get to commercial production, and that gives us the flexibility that we need to honor that. You know, the only thing I might add is, you know, should we advance down the road and start looking at a second center of production or second, third, fourth contracts, then you may see additional incremental purchases. But here again, with that same objective in mind, so they'll be modest.
Let's talk about the plants a little bit, because some of your verbiage was a little different than what I've heard in the past. And specifically, in the past, I've heard you talk about considering Kingsville, starting up Kingsville more as something you'd look in comparison to maybe expanding Rosita. And I heard you say that when the demand's there, you're going to start up Kingsville. Talk just in general about what makes the most sense if we get to that point where we're expanding, we need more capacity.
Well, we're focusing our strategy, or at least our short-term strategies, centered around Rosita, simply because it's the one that's the closest to being ready to go into production, but also it has capacity in it. And both these plants, Kingsville and Rosita, have the capacity right now, have the infrastructure in place where they can at least double, if not more, their current capacity. So what we see right now is that by focusing on one plant allows us to execute on our plan. But as we start to see success in additional properties that can feed Rosita, et cetera, we could also invest money into Kingsville Dome and increase our capacity even further to receive that production. And it helps de-risk, it spreads out the risk on for production interruptions, but also it provides this opportunity for us going forward as effectively as an option, production option for us. Because the Kingsville Dome site is in relatively good shape. It just needs more work than Rosita does at this point. And right now we're focusing on building up our production profile, so it's ideal. It's ideally situated right now as an option.
Yeah, I think I would just add, Michael, it's going to depend on a lot of economic considerations at the time, whether we were to expand Rosita or commission Kingsville. It depends on how fast the price is moving, how high, where the satellite facilities are compared to the plants. So there's a number of factors that go into that. So both are still an option, but I think that's the key word is optionality, as Paul pointed out.
And as far as resources, you said you've got the permit, you're getting close to drilling in the Butler Ranch?
Yes, that's correct. We've right now we're working on contracts, drilling contracts at the moment.
Okay. Is that the main area where you're going to be drilling, or are there other areas as well in Texas?
Oh, there are others. It's just that's the first, that one of those what we see as a short-term objective is to begin to develop, to confirm resources at Butler Ranch, but we are in the process of preparing exploration permits for at least 4 more properties, and hope to have all those done before the start of the fourth quarter.
I want to talk a little bit about the slide on the data log, because that's something that we probably don't give them enough attention to, or at least the analysts and the investors maybe don't. Tell me a little bit more about, are these properties in Texas that are covered in the data log, or are they New Mexico? Are they all over?
Yes, the database is really a key asset for us. It is probably the largest database aside from Cameco or Orano, in that it's worldwide. It consists of the Union Carbide database, Ranchers Exploration database, a number of different companies, a good portion of the Atlas Minerals database, U.S. Smelting, U.S. Vanadium, goes on and on. So it's quite extensive. Took over 3 years to scan it. We've got, in conventional paper terms, about 800 filing cabinets, about 140 map filing cabinets full of data. So it's quite extensive, but of course we've concentrated on the U.S. portions of it and the portions of it that are ISL amenable, or that we think are ISL amenable or ISR amenable. So definitely a key asset for us. There's still some undiscovered jewels in it just due to its size, and will remain a key asset for us for quite some time.
We also haven't spent a lot of time talking about Group 11. Give me a little bit of the history of how that came to be, the 3-person, 3-company ownership of it, to why you think the current structure makes the most sense.
Well, Group 11 is a private company. It's one of our outside assets in enCore. We started out with a 40% ownership by providing in-situ expertise to the Group 11 company. Enviro Minerals, formerly EnviroLeach, has the solution, proprietary non-cyanide, non-toxic solutions for gold recovery and other metal recovery. And then Golden Predator had 20% simply as operator, and had performed some of the, actually had been the first commercial field test of the chemistry as a non-toxic lixiviant. Since then, we've done a $1 million US private round financing. So all of our founders' positions have been diminished somewhat into the low to mid 30s range in terms of percentage ownership. And it's designed as a private company primarily because it's not a mining company. It just happens to be, it's an environmental technology company that happens to have production of metals as its objective. And by using there are various examples. They're very few in number, but there are various examples of ISR recovery of gold. And as I mentioned, mostly in Russia, although there's one in Azerbaijan. Mostly having used cyanide, which obviously causes some significant problems and makes it really ineffective, or not really ineffective, but impossible to use in the Western world or civilized world. So by using the, and you do ISL for several other metals, notably uranium is the biggest use. Half the uranium in the world is produced by ISR. We've got a leading ISR team in terms of technical ability and in terms of innovations. Number of, I think, 6 or 7 patents in the field held by various members of our group, primarily Dennis Stover. And you combine that technology with a chemistry that offers the potential of being benign. There are no groundwater restrictions on its discharge, et cetera. So, it opens the door to taking those few examples where ISR has worked on gold and simply replacing a very unhealthy, toxic chemistry with a very benign, acceptable chemistry. And we're in the early stages. It certainly has a long ways to go before being proven. But if it does prove out, it'll revolutionize the mining industry. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the advantages of ISR that you see in uranium being applied to the gold mining industry would be truly revolutionary. And we view it as quite disruptive technology. Here again, lots of R&D, and funding a company publicly for R&D is not a particularly easy or good route to go. So we're funding it privately, and would anticipate keeping it private for a number of years until the R&D has shown some real potential. And along the way, I think there's certainly a much deeper well for financing a private company aimed at environmental acceptable metal recovery than there is in the traditional mining sector. So, I suspect we'll pick up some very significant private investors should we show any promise on this technology. And those tests actually begin here in October. So we'll have our first round of tests out year end or maybe January. So those will be the first key steps with any R&D project. It's an incremental step-by-step process. So you've got to have each step show some promise to move on to the next. But we're pretty excited about the potential future. But here again, several years to realize the potential on it.
So the game plan is to establish the technology, prove the technology, and then treat it as a marketable product that you take out to other mining companies and sell?
No, we don't want to be in the service business. In the service business, you end up basically being in the shoe business. It's a volume thing, and you don't really make any real upside. So, I think we'd keep the process proprietary as long as possible. Might turn it into a public company for funding purposes once it's proven. But I think the real objective is to own and operate our own properties with the in-situ, assuming here again that we can prove it to be commercially viable.
Okay. enCore has done a terrific job over the last 12 months of setting benchmarks and for the most part meeting those benchmarks. Bring us up to speed. So as we talk about the next 12 months, what do you think investors should be keeping an eye on? What are the major things that will be accomplished?
Well, I'll take the first crack at it, and Paul can jump in and add to it. I think some of the more obvious catalysts are proving up some of the existing historic resources to 43-101 status in Texas, bringing some of the new projects in Texas, by new I mean new to us, into the fold and reactivating their previously existing licenses. And certainly, the keystone will be getting Rosita into operational status. So, I think all within the next 9 months or so, you should see all of those happen. On the corporate level, we look at a lot of M&A opportunities. Not a lot of them fit exactly what we're looking for, but I'd certainly be hopeful over the course of the next year that you see at least one of those materialize. So those would be the 4 big catalysts from my point of view, and those are all pretty much aside from the general market tone, which will be set by the uranium price. And we do view that favorably, so you can include that as well, but it's certainly not unique to ourselves.
And I think that Bill did a good job of capturing all that, kind of the next 12 months, what we plan, what do we want to do when we grow up. So, yep. So
we'll probably also have a few other minor catalysts, such as non-core assets being vended out to other entities and taking an equity position in those to foster their growth. So here again, not one of the key points, but nonetheless a valuable one. And even referring back to any successes that come out of Group 11 certainly would provide a bit of a tailwind.
Terrific. Well, that gives us a lot to keep an eye on. I wish you the best of luck as we go forward, and thank you for being part of our conference.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for joining us for this C-Suite interview presentation brought to you by channelchek. Visit our YouTube channel for more interview content, as well as virtual roadshows and conference presentation replays. New content is added regularly, so subscribe below to stay up to date. Visit channelchek.com or click the link in the description to access equity research, news, and advanced market data on this and the 6,000 other small and micro-cap companies listed.